Would like to call to order the September 17th, 2018 Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners regular meeting. Welcome. It's good to see everybody here tonight. I think probably because of there being no school today, our ROCT members did not make it, so would you please join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, is Reverend Wilson here? I think the hurricane must have kept him away also. So I would ask everyone if you would just bow in a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay, first item on our agenda tonight is approval or correction of the meeting minutes, which you all have a copy before you. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And we move to approval of the agenda, which you also have before you. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And we move now to recognitions and presentations. At this time, we're happy to have Jimmy LENTZ with us for a recognition of Dr. Craig Corey.
Good evening. Myself, many active staff, many retirees come before you this evening to recognize the amazing career of Dr. Craig Corey. We come before you this evening to recognize the generous tenure of Dr. Craig Corey upon his resignation as Medical Director of Cabarrus County EMS. Dr. Corey has been committed to providing innovative medical guidance to Cabarrus County EMS for over 24 years. During this time, he has overseen the implementation of numerous changes that have resulted in improved patient care and which have directly related and benefited long-term patient outcomes. Upon the resignation of Dr. Harold Miller in 1994, many EMS crew members, to include myself, had a lot of anxiety in regards to the naming of a new medical director. A common sounding board for many EMS employees at the time was Dr. Kenneth Welch, another practicing physician at then Cabarrus Memorial Hospital. Many of the EMS crew members approached Dr. Welch in regards to him accepting the medical director's position. Dr. Welch's response put the whole situation into perspective. Dr. Welch stated that the right physician for the position was Dr. Craig Corey. Dr. Welch said, if we were to hold a car wash as a fundraiser, Dr. Welch with us would be busy washing cars, while Dr. Corey would be coordinating the event, planning the event, sitting back to make sure the event went well, and looking into the future to plan next year's event. As trivial as this comparison may seem, this is exactly what we've witnessed over the last 24 years. Dr. Corey's unselfish guidance has placed Cabarrus County EMS on the forefront of EMS care nationwide. Please help me in saying thank you for a fantastic career as medical director and wish you great success in your next chapter in life. Also, Major Justin Brines would like to make a plaque presentation, and then retired EMS Director Alan Thompson has a few words.
We had a lot to say, but we had to figure out what we could get on a plaque. So Dr. Craig Corey, in appreciation for 24 years of loyal service and unselfish dedication to the citizens and staff of Cabarrus County, Your contributions to pre-hospital medicine are recognized and will be built on for years to come. 17th September 2018. And we thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And Director LENTZ described it well when he mentioned Dr. Corey as being the visionary, as the planner. And we look back over the years, we had the opportunity and been blessed to know Dr. Corey as a paramedic, as a friend, as an educator, and also as an administrator. And one of the things that strikes me about Dr. Corey is his desire to challenge the status quo. Not to just do things because they've always been done, but to do things because they were the right thing to be done. As a result, Cabarrus County Emergency Medical Services has achieved great success in being the first to accomplish many things. One of the first to perform field pre-hospital rapid sequence intubation, the first to perform adult sternal intraosseous infusions, one of the first to be designated a model EMS system, and one of the first to challenge the research that, the faulty research that suggested we should be using mass trousers and we should be placing everybody on long spine boards. As a result of his vision, Cabarrus County EMS has continued to grow into the model EMS system it is today, and it's because of his commitment, his refusal to accept the word no, and to say that we can always do things better. And it truly has been an honor to serve with him. So thank you, Dr. Corey.
Maybe I should just read this again. No, that'd be copping out. It has truly been exceptional to be here. I've had a great time, hopefully at nobody's expense. But I can tell you it's an expensive business to do EMS, and without your all support, we couldn't have done what we did. So your support was critical to making our mission move forward. But I had some wild ideas. A lot of them paid off. Sometimes they had to be tempered a little bit by Alan or Ron or David, and now Jimmy. But it's been a great ride. I would not have done anything different. Looking forward to a new adventure, and I'm still just an email away if you need me. I'll still harass somebody and get something done. So, but thank you so much for your support. Thank you, all of EMS, for their support, all the paramedics lining that back wall, and the fire trucks that just went rushing by to remind us that 24 hours a day we're still doing this. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Curry, and best wishes to you in your next endeavor. You know, we hear about outstanding awards that our EMS folks receive. It seems like month after month, year after year, and I know you've been a big part of that, and we certainly appreciate it. Okay, next on our agenda is Constitution Week proclamation. Is Donna Johnson with us? Okay. Did you have some words you'd like to say, or would you like to read the proclamation, or would you like for me to do that?
I'll let you.
Okay, very good. Okay, we have the Cabarrus Black Boys chapter of the NSDAR, Daughters of the American Revolution, have requested the board adopt a proclamation in observance of Constitution Week and the signing of the U.S. Constitution. And I will read that proclamation to you now. Constitution Week 2018 proclamation. Whereas September 17th, 2018 marks the 231st anniversary of the signing of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize this magnificent document and the anniversary of its creation, and whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17 through 23 as Constitution Week. Now there, the Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaims September 17 through 23, 2018 as Constitution Week in Cabarrus County, and urge our citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787. Do I hear a motion to approve or adopt this proclamation?
Move we adopt the proclamation.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes, and we're happy to do that, and we appreciate you being here. Okay, now we move to an update from Emergency Management on Hurricane Florence, and we're glad to have Bobby Smith with us.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to update you on Hurricane Florence and our response. First of all, I would like to say that we were very fortunate here in Cabarrus County based upon the track and the rain bands not coming in as soon and as heavy as predicted. Our rain totals averaged between 5 inches in some parts of the county, and our highest level was at 8.9 in the Midland, Mount Pleasant, and up into the northeast corridor. The Rocky River has crested. It crested at 23 feet this morning. That is considered a minor flood stage. To give some historical perspective, in 2008, the remnants of Tropical Storm Faye, we crested at 30 feet. And at that level, we flooded about 70 homes and businesses. So right now we are on the way down, which is the way we want it to go. It should continue to go down overnight. Early in the week, we began coordination calls with North Carolina Emergency Management, the National Weather Service, and our partner counties to get briefings and update. We kept the community and the commissioners and our partners updated through emails and other phone calls. As you know, this storm changed tracks numerous times by the numerous updates I kept sending you. Again, our EOC, Emergency Operations Center, we began operations based upon the forecast we had. We began our operations at 6:30 Saturday night, and we ceased those operations at 2 o'clock this morning. We ran those 24 hours just with emergency management and the sheriff's office staff. Several emergency service agencies increased their staffing over the weekend. Municipal fire departments, some of the volunteer fire departments, EMS, Sheriff's Communications, and we also took the county manpower unit to 24 hours over the weekend just to add an additional resource if needed. We had 6 structures with damage from trees falling on them over the weekend, and we had 1 structure house with a foundation failure due to some drainage issues. At our highest point yesterday afternoon, we had 34 roads covered with water. We are down to 6. We expect most of those, again, to go clear through the evening hours this evening. Some of those do have some culvert and bridge issues that'll have to be inspected. The culverts will have to be repaired, and the 2 bridges, the one on Airport Road and Miami Church Road, will have to be inspected by DOT engineers before those will reopen. Our peak power outage between the 3 providers in the county was 2,400. Was our peak number. That kind of fluctuated between Saturday and Sunday. It would go down, come back up a little bit and go down, but the peak we had between all 3 systems was at 2,400. We had 1 water rescue this morning down on Highway 200, and that was successful. Just again, to put everything in a reference or historical perspective, is that our flooding levels, our damages to homes, and our power outages, we have seen much higher during severe thunderstorms that have come through this county. So again, with the predictions and the forecast of this storm, we were very fortunate. Unfortunately, some of our neighboring counties were not as fortunate as we were, and our thoughts and prayers go to the families and the first responders who are still actively working in those counties. Now that we are kind of out of the danger zone, we are seeing requests for deployments for our emergency resources down east. Currently, we have 8 Concord firefighters in Brunswick County. They were airlifted by the National Guard to that location. We have public health nurses down east, and we expect more deployment requests to come in as the week goes on. Our office has been requested with some other agencies to be on standby for possible deployment of some of our hazardous material assets and radiological protection assets. I can't name every agency and individual I would like to thank for the support, but we have a great team here in Cabarrus County with our county government, with the cooperation and collaboration that you folks have built with the municipalities and with our hospital system and with our non-government organizations, Salvation Army, Red Cross. It is definitely a team approach here in Cabarrus County, and we have a great team. And I would address any questions you may have.
Okay, questions for Bobby? Well, I would just like to compliment you and all of your staff and all the people that you've worked with. It was, I had an opportunity to visit the Operations Center on Thursday afternoon before it was actually open in preparation, and I was more than impressed with the amount of talent that sat around that table and the discussions that went on. Many of the questions that I asked were probably elementary ones, but there was a rapid answer to every single one. So I think if the basis could be covered, you folks definitely had them covered. And so we very much appreciate your efforts and long hours in dealing with it. And as you said, certainly send our prayers to those around us that were not as fortunate as we are or have been. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we move now to informal public comments. And I have two of the yellow cards here. And first we have Marcia Morris.
Good evening. I'm Marcia Morris. I'm representing the Friends of the Mount Pleasant Public Library, and I'm joined in the audience tonight by some of our other supporters, Sam and Risa Treadaway and Martha Dobson. And I have good news for y'all. This should be the last time that I'll report on the fundraising efforts to expand the Mount Pleasant Library, and that's because in just under 7 months, we have met our fundraising goal of $25,000. With their donations, residents and businesses from Mount Pleasant have spoken, saying that Mount Pleasant needs more library space to effectively serve the needs of our community. As you know, classes and programs are severely limited by the lack of space. We need a dedicated meeting room, a dedicated children's area, more space for staff, and more space for patrons to both read and work. We've been on the capital improvement plan for many years, and now we have the funding to get started, so let's get going. The library belongs to the county to serve the county residents, and so the ball's kind of in your court now. We need to figure out how to proceed. So we look forward to working with you. And while I'm here, since I still have 1 minute and 56 seconds, I just want to add a quick endorsement from the Mount Pleasant Friends of the Library for library trustee candidate Rick Burleson. Rick is a great supporter of the Mount Pleasant Library, experienced in leadership, and knows the Mount Pleasant community very well, and we know that he will make a great library trustee. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have James Fulton.
Excuse me. Good evening to the commissioners, Manager Downs, and the chairman. I'd like to thank the county, first of all, for the work that it's done in preparing for the hurricane and the rain and so on that we just went through. I think we're very fortunate that we came through it relatively unscathed, especially compared to other folks in the county who are doing a lot worse, and obviously thank all the first responders who were out there helping people in the county who need it and extending that to other areas of the state. I think that's wonderful. What I'm actually here to address, though, is an issue that came up in your June 4th work session regarding funding for preliminary work on the proposed replacement of the McAllister Elementary School. I realize this is ancient history, but I think that it's important to discuss. When Kelly Klutz and Tim Lauder appeared before you to request $1.5 million for land acquisition for this project, they made some assertions I think that the county should question. Mr. Lauder and Ms. Klutz suggested that the reason for adding the 500 seats to the McAllister site was that Cropper, the consultant who was hired to do the realignment study for the county, recommended it. And I would be surprised that they would make a recommendation such as this specifically, considering the fact that they're still in the process of determining how many seats are needed and how those should be distributed through the district in the county. It may be that they did suggest that additional seats are needed for the county, but I very much doubt that they made a recommendation that they be added specifically to McAllister. I've emailed Mr. Louder and Ms. Klutz requesting some clarification on this, but I haven't heard anything back. The reason that I bring this up is because I think it's important to understand, and for the commission to understand, the reasoning and rationale that the school board has used to recommend a new $14 million 800-seat school for this site. And I just wanted to make sure that there were questions that were asked about how they arrived at that decision. I want to make sure that they're answered. And then the second thing that I'd like to bring up, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get through this in the time I have left, but as part of discussing the closure of Beverly Hills and the new school for McAllister with the board, the board has seemed reluctant to consider a renovation option for either one of these schools. And one of the reasons that they've given for this is that they feel that there's some kind of a mandate from the county that says that there won't be any construction funding allocated for schools that don't add capacity. I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, I'd like to know, how that policy was formulated and how that was passed along to the board. But thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you. Okay, and those are all the comment cards that I have for tonight. So we move now to old business. And I think Jonathan Marshall will talk with us about historic items.
This is an item we brought to you a couple months ago on some historic items that had been put in storage in this building, and when we were doing some changing of offices, we had realized we were no longer displaying them and had suggested that we could pass those on to Historic Cabarrus for permanent display. Commissioner Poole had asked us to look at other options, and we had contacted our library. They don't feel like they have a good place to display those items either. For us, the option really is in our rotunda downstairs, which does have some displays in it, but I'm not sure it attracts the people who are looking for the history, and we also use that for public functions. So we would continue to recommend that they be displayed at Historic Cabarrus, but the county manager suggested rather than asking you to declare those surplus, so we still can have some control on that we simply do that by loaning them to Historic Cabarrus. I put some information in your agenda from Historic Cabarrus and their response. Part of that is their ability to archive and store things properly. They did indicate they would not be able, with the limited space, to display them at all times, but they do have the expertise in maintaining those items and archiving those items more so than we do. But by just lending them to them on this basis, we would have the ability, if they were not displayed enough, to bring them back in and possibly display them somewhere else. So at that point, I don't know that you would need to take an action as long as there's a consensus, or you may wish to take an action to, if you choose to just loan those to Historic Cabarrus.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Marshall?
Have you discussed with the Midland Library branch that's under construction, since Reed Gold Mine is in that part of the county, or with Mount Pleasant and their historical, they have great space there, a museum, if either of them would want to have those to be able to display?
Yeah. I had not approached the Eastern Cabarrus Museum, but the Midland Library, we've just been planning that space, and that will be, I think that would be difficult. We are fairly tight in that space and have done a lot of planning to make sure we can get all the programs in there that they've requested. And again, that it's not open as long as as many hours as some of our other branches, but Eastern Cabarrus would be another option.
I mean, I just think they're extremely historical, and I understand they would not necessarily have a permanent display somewhere, but it may be between the two organizations, Eastern Cabarrus, being in that part of the county, would welcome the idea of being able to display.
Okay. So I think if you're interested in the county retaining ownership, which it sounds like you are, and we would just loan them, that those would be two options to consider, both the Eastern Cabarrus as well as historic Cabarrus as possibilities.
I think I certainly would be in favor of placing those on loan to historic Cabarrus. If Eastern Cabarrus were interested, I think we can add that flexibility as well. I see heads nodding, so I think we have consensus on that.
Okay,
Great.
we'll pursue that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we move now to our consent agenda, and you all have a copy of that before you. Of course, these are all items that were discussed at our regular work session meeting the first Monday of the month in great detail. As I mentioned at our last meeting, I had heard someone say that most of the business on the agenda was taken care of in a secret meeting, and they just voted on it at one time. And so that's why I was offering that explanation, that we do discuss these items in detail at our work session, which is the first Monday of each month. That gives citizens an opportunity, 2 weeks, to contact us if they have any questions or concerns about any of those items, and then also the opportunity to appear at our regular meeting to speak on them. So do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Move for approval. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes, and we move to new business. First up is Planning and Development Home Program CAPER. And we are happy to have Kelly Sifford to talk with us about that.
Thank you. So with our participation in the home program, we are required each year to do an annual report, which is the CAPER report, to discuss our activities for the year. As we discussed in the agenda session, we have 2 years' worth of funding that's stacked up, ready to go into the Prosperity Ridge project, which I have been working with the county attorney this week to finalize some documents for their tax credit closure. So that is anticipated at the end of October. So Cabarrus County has $94,206 in 2016-17 money and $90,392 in 15-16 money that have been committed to a 60-unit senior living complex on Little Texas Road in Kannapolis. And again, that is slated to close this fall. We have expended $784 this year in fair housing advertisements and public notices and whatnot. And we do need to hold a public hearing.
Okay, great. Any questions for Kelly? Thank you. Okay, we'll call to order the public hearing on the home program CAPER as previously discussed. If there's anyone that would like to come to the podium to speak in regards to this matter. Okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you. Okay, we move to item number 2, North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, solicitation of county legislative goals. And I think County Manager Downs is going to speak on that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have passed out, or I've sent them out to you earlier in the week, last week. As you know, the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners is getting ready to hold their biennial goal-setting session. And in addition to our need to establish these goals locally and strive to move those in a positive direction, we also want to be a part of that statewide campaign. As we advocate with our legislators, so does the collective of 100 counties advocate with the legislators on these particular goals. And what will happen from here, if you approve this set of goals, we will operate from them locally, but they will also go into the submittals of all 100 counties. And those 100 counties, the commissioners will come together and they will vet through those goals, and they will narrow them down to a workable number, but also they will vote on those priorities of the collective of the NCACC. I have passed them out. I can read them individually. You've had a chance to review them. If you had any other additions, we can do that as well. Would you like for me to read every one of them? There's a large, the main categories are unfunded mandates, and that is to any time that we would request that as legislators at the state and national level, when they do propose new laws or changes, we would hope that they do not pass down those expenses to the local governments. We hope that when they make those changes that they have funding already identified at their particular level. The other is local option revenues. We are trying to, as a collective board, have advocated for the last year, trying to look for other options for revenue sources. As we know, the local options that we have not been able to fund everything that we need to have funded. So we're always looking for new options that we can use, in particular, capital expenses for schools, operational expenses for schools that we're participating in as well, but then also our own programs, and whether it's human services programs and transportation, whether it's parks and recreation to build and maintain parks. So we're advocating for other options, and those would be an additional sales tax potentially. Of course, we know that to get an increased quarter-cent sales tax, that would require a referendum. So what we're asking for is to allow the local jurisdictions to call for those referendums and let the voters vote on those. Excuse me, the collective bargaining, that's one's carried over for many years, I think, and that there's been some attempts to have collective bargaining brought into some of the public safety departments, and of course this one stayed on the list, and to continue to advocate against the collective bargaining for state and local employees. Schools is the fourth category. That would be to oppose any shift of charter school capital expense to the county. As you know, we're already funding the expenses of our schools, both school systems, and having a hard time keeping up with that. If we were continue to have more added on to our plate, it would be even more difficult. And we, along with the association, have been advocating for many years now to have the North Carolina Education Lottery Funds reinstated back to the 40% that they had promised originally, and we're moving in a positive direction. They're not reducing that number, but we'd still like to get that back up because those lottery funds are what we use to fund and build schools and repair and maintain other school buildings, and to reinstate full funding for the ADM membership. That's the way the schools get their funding each year, or a major portion of their funding, and we want to maintain those levels as we can. We've got 4 rather lengthy goals that have been submitted by our Human Services Department, and those are revise and make appropriate adjustments to the county Memorandum of Understanding requirements and the performance measures required by House Bill 630. The DSS performance measures should match federal requirements. Concessions should be made for extenuating circumstances beyond DSS control related to the court system, mental health services, and client cooperation. And DSS's need reliable data reports and access to track performances. Advocate for increased funding for adult and aging support, adult protective services, and guardianship. As you know, in the last couple of years, the cost of guardianship has been continually pushed down to the local governments, and while that cost is being pushed down, the numbers are increasing, and they're increasing because the age limits have been increased as well. It used to be that most of the guardians were older in age, and now they're becoming more younger in age as well. So the numbers are growing there, so therefore the expenses are continuing to grow without additional funding being passed on. advocate for hold harmless provisions and staggered payment plans to control and cap the liabilities counties, excuse me, under Medicaid. Overpayment recoupment plan, which holds counties financially responsible for erroneous issuance of Medicaid benefits and Medicaid claims payments resulting when the county DSS takes any actions that require payment of Medicaid claims for an ineligible individual. The division will recoup from the county any amounts paid relating to deductibles, copay, coinsurance, premiums, and PML as a result of erroneous eligibility or incorrect calculation of PML. Adult Medicaid and long-term care cases could result in substantially large paychecks and could cause undue hardships on counties with only 60 days to recoup payment. Some counties are opting to purchase liability insurance for these expenses that they become so large. And the fourth one for Human Services would be to advocate for more child care subsidies funding to address waiting lists and for the state to utilize federal block grants for the intended purpose and not supplant federal dollars for state dollars. So those are all of our human service projected goals that we're suggesting. General legislation, support this local citizen involvement by requiring a local referendum prior to legal actions to change existing procedures for electing county commissioners, creating districts and territories, etc. Study the impact to local government finances of exempting nonprofits from the requirement of paying property taxes and review possible payment in lieu of taxes requirements. Improve the tier rating system by allowing smaller towns and cities located in Tier 3 counties to compete for all available grants by creating split-tiered counties. Change North Carolina Rural Center's grant and loan award criteria to more closely match the USDA's rural development aid requirements, specifically related to the prohibition against aid to municipalities in Tier 3 counties. For Medicaid, pursue Medicaid reimbursement options for community paramedics. At this time, we're not getting full payment for those, so we would like to have that same reimbursement as we do for normal paramedic or EMS calls. Board of Elections, these were carried over from last year. Support the creation of larger voting districts. Allow counties to reduce the amount of operational voting precincts. Continue to permit early voting districts. Support flexibility for local boards of election to reorganize precincts in order to create more uniform precinct sizes. And mental health, to request to revisit and re-examine the current North Carolina Certificate of Need law, which prohibits health care providers, including mental health facilities, from acquiring, replacing, or adding to their facilities without prior approval of the Department of Health and Human Services. Exploration of the Certificate of Need law would reveal limitations associated with the available services, restrictions based on provider geographic location, and the most cost-effective and efficient service provisions. By reviewing and making necessary revisions to the Certificate of Need law, it would allow providers to increase capacity through expansion, increase bed availability, and more adequately meet the needs of the residents. Thank you. As you know, as we've talked with our mental health advocates and had the many meetings over the last 2 years, most of the conversation ends that there is a limited access to beds in this county. We have 16 beds in this county, and we're not unlike most of the other counties around as well. So we're continually going to advocate for that. Recommend the creation of a Medicaid opt-in program, which would allow residents in North Carolina to choose Medicaid through a pay premium-based system. This recommendation is based on the limitation of commercial insurance services provided in the areas of advanced mental health access. Early childhood education, we are still trying to shape this one here, but so as a placeholder here, we request additional funding for early childhood education programs throughout the system. So we are still working with the Association of County Commissioners in crafting one that will request that funding with some meat, and so that we can move forward locally. As you know, you have created an advisory board that is working very hard right now to identifying those needs and to identifying potential programs as well, and we're searching for some additional funding to help get those programs going because they are in such dire need. The environmental section is protect soil and water conservation grants and/or funding streams per the 2016 policies, positions, and action items. And finally, for our library system is to support legislation to restore state aid funding of public libraries to the 2000 level of $15.7 million and eliminate special provisions that distribute state aid outside of the equitable formula developed by the state library system. That is a rather lengthy list that we are proposing to pass on to the association, but they will be receiving probably the equivalent of 99 more of these lists for them to review and then to bring the caucus in to start reviewing them individually as the different committees of the association, but then collectively in the one bill pass or the legislative session of goals. So I present those to you, and I ask for any revisions that you have, any suggestions, or if there's any others that you would like us to add to the list prior to us preparing them to send out to the association. I will add that they have extended their deadline to October 5th, so we have a few more days to work on this, but the sooner you get them to us, the sooner we can prepare the document and get it on its way.
Okay. Thank you very much. This, as Manager Downs mentioned, each of the 100 counties in the state submit these lists of goals. I think during the month of October, they're divided up into the various steering committees of the association. They meet, consider and recommend and distill it down a little bit. Then it goes to the Legislative Goals Committee in October and November. They once again work on it. Then it goes to the Board of Directors of the State Association. They distill it down a little further and then eventually comes back to our Legislative Goals Conference in January. So it's a lengthy process. And we appreciate the work that you've done putting that together for us, and encourage any of you, if you have anything to add, please submit it as soon as possible. So we move now to item number 3, acquisition of property, and we're happy to have Jonathan Marshall and Kyle Billifer to talk with us about it.
And actually, Harris Morrison with New Branch is also here, our real estate advisors, but this is a property on Cabarrus Avenue that we had identified, actually 3 properties on Cabarrus Avenue, including a warehouse and office building that we have identified for purchase and negotiated with the property owners. The purpose of this would be to provide warehousing needs for both the county and Cabarrus County schools. This will allow us offices for our infrastructure and asset management. It would allow relocation and enlargement of fleet over time, as well as some additional land that we could possibly build some emergency service warehousing on and meet a number of our other needs. As I said, we've negotiated with the property owner and they have agreed and signed a contract, so we present that to you this evening to purchase these 3 properties and the buildings on them for $3.1 million. It is a 90-day due diligence period that allows us to perform all our inspections. It allows you to tour the facility if you would like. There is an option for the seller to extend that additional 30 days because they will need to find somewhere to relocate. And then there also is a provision in there that closing would not occur until at least 90 days after that due diligence period, assuming, again, that we're ready to move forward. So we're presenting this contract to you for approval, as well as our finance director, Susan Farrington, had proposed how we could budget for this. We had already had funds set aside for this, but we needed some additional funds, so that's included in your agenda. So we're asking for both the approval of the contract as well as approval of the framework of that budget amendment so that we can sign that contract.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Marshall? This is an item that we've been discussing and looking for a suitable location for quite some time. So
Yeah, and this is really, this is a great location when you consider where all our facilities are located, with the mass of those being downtown, of course, but with facilities throughout the county, this is a very central location and a good place for us a hub for us to work out of.
Okay, well, at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the purchase contract between Cabarrus County and Evangel Worship Center Incorporated, and authorize the county manager to execute the contract on behalf of Cabarrus County, subject to review or revisions by the county attorney.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the necessary budget amendments as outlined by County Finance Director Susan Fearington.
Move for approval. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. We did not make a motion to approve those legislative goals and I did not do that because they're not totally finalized. Do we need to have that before we send those forward?
They're due on the 5th?
And we meet on the
First.
1st.
Okay.
So we still have an opportunity to do that at our work session. Okay, we move now to appointments to boards and committees. First, we have an appointment to the Cardinal Innovations Healthcare Solutions Community Oversight Committee. Ridella Hedrick's term on the Cardinal Innovations Healthcare Solutions Community Oversight Board expired July 31st. She is interested in serving another term. Ms. Hedrick has served on this board since 2012. An exception to the length of service provision of the appointment policy will be needed for her. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to reappoint Ridella Hedrick to the Cardinal Innovations Healthcare Solutions Community Oversight Board for a 3-year term ending July 31st, 2021, including an exception to the length of service provision of the appointment policy.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes, and we move to the Library Board of Trustees. The Library Board of Trustees is in need of a Mount Pleasant representative to serve the Cabarrus County Public Library System. Rick Burleson has applied to serve as the Mount Pleasant trustee and is eligible to serve as the Mount Pleasant representative. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to appoint Rick Burleson to the Library Board of Trustees as the Mount Pleasant representative for a 3-year term ending September 30th, 2021.
Move for approval. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And we move to the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. At the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council's August meeting, the council voted to recommend the following individuals for reappointment: Susan Burns, School Superintendent Designee; Dean Vernon, Sheriff Designee; David Wall, Chief Court Counselor Designee; Perry Gabriel, Active Living and Parks; and Angela Ward at large. A letter of recommendation in this regard is included in the agenda. All are willing to serve another term. An exception to the length of service provision of the appointment policy will be needed for Ms. Burns, Mr. Gabriel, and Ms. Ward. Mr. Wall also serves on the Mental Health Advisory Board and resides in Montgomery County. An exception to the service on multiple boards and residency provisions of the appointment policy will be needed for him. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to reappoint Susan Burns, School Superintendent Designee; Dean Vernon, Sheriff Designee; David Wall, Chief Court Counselor Designee; Perry Gabriel, Active Living and Parks, and Angela Ward at large to the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council for 2-year terms ending September 30th, 2020, including exceptions to the length of service provision of the appointment policy for Ms. Burns, Mr. Gabriel, and Ms. Ward, and an exception to the service on multiple boards and residency provisions of the appointment policy for Mr. Wall.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And we move now to reports. And at this time, we'll receive updates from commission members who serve as liaisons to municipalities or on various boards or committees. Does anybody have updates tonight? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move to general comments by board members. Does anybody have anything they would like to share tonight? Okay, we do not have need.
Have our attorney back at the meeting.
Yes, we're very happy to have Rich Cook, our attorney, back with us after. Okay, we do not have need of a closed session tonight, so at this time I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And we stand adjourned. Thank you.